You ever have that feeling that your software is just a house of cards? You make one tiny change and the whole thing just threatens to come crashing down? Well, today we're going to tackle that exact problem head-on. We're diving into Robert C. Martin's clean architecture, which is really a design philosophy for building software that's meant to last.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You need to swap out a database or maybe upgrade a web framework, and suddenly, it's chaos. Your core business logic is so tangled up with all these technical details that what should be a simple change turns into this high-risk, weekend-ruining mess. It's super frustrating and honestly, way too common. So, the solution, according to clean architecture, isn't about finding some new shiny tool to fix everything. It's actually a total shift in how you think about your code. It's about structuring your application to build a kind of fortress, a protective shield around the thing that actually matters most, the rules that run your business. Everything else, the database, the UI, the web server, they're all just details. Details that you should be able to swap out.
Okay, so how do we build this fortress? Well, it all boils down to one single golden rule. Seriously, if you can get your head around this one concept, you'll understand the absolute heart of clean architecture.
And here it is. Dependencies must always point inward. That's it. That one sentence is the key to the whole thing. It means the outer, more volatile parts of your system, the details, they can know about the inner stable parts. But those inner layers, they have to remain completely blissfully ignorant of what's happening in the outside world.
So what does inward really mean? Well, think of your application like a set of concentric circles, or a dartboard. The outer rings are things like your frameworks and your database, all the technical stuff that changes pretty often. The inner rings, the bullseye, that's where your stable business rules live. And here's the crucial part. Your business logic should never, ever have a line of code that mentions a specific database like PostgreSQL or a UI framework like React. Never.
All right, let's take a little journey from the outside in. We're going to deconstruct this architecture layer by layer so you can see how it all fits together. And we'll start right at the very core.
So, right at the heart of it all, we have what are called entities. Now, these aren't just simple data structures. They are the critical business objects and the universal rules that govern your entire enterprise. Think about the concepts that would exist even if you didn't have a computer, things like a customer or a product. These are the fundamental truths of your business. Just look at these examples. A user is a user. It doesn't matter if they're stored in a database or a text file. An order is an order, no matter how it's displayed on a screen. And a rule like an order's total can't be negative, that is pure business logic. Notice there is zero, absolutely zero mention of any technology here. Okay, the next layer out is use cases. Now, if entities are the nouns of your system, you can think of use cases as the verbs. They represent the specific actions that your application can actually perform, and they do it by orchestrating the entities to achieve some kind of business goal.
For instance, a transfer money use case would orchestrate two account entities. It would enforce all the rules for how that transfer has to work. It knows about the entities inside of it, but it still knows absolutely nothing about the web or the database or any other external tool. It just defines the workflow. That's it.
Now we get to the really clever bit, the translators. This next layer, the interface adapters, has one job and one job only. It converts data. It takes data from the messy outside world, say an HTTP request, and it reshapes it into the clean, simple format that the inner use cases and entities need to work with. And then it does the same thing in reverse, getting data ready to be sent back out.
And finally, on the very outermost layer, we have frameworks and drivers. This is where all the tools we love to argue about online actually live, Your database, your web framework, your UI library. In clean architecture, these are all just implementation details. They are basically plugins to your application, not the foundation of it.
Okay, so that's the structure. And I know what you might be thinking. That seems like a lot of layers and a lot of work. But trust me, the payoff for this separation of concerns is enormous. Let's look at the real-world benefits you actually get from designing your system this way.
To make this real, let's look at this banking system example here on the slide. The entity is the account. The use case is transfer money. The interface adapter, that's your API controller that handles the incoming request. And the framework is the web server and the database. Now here's the magic. If you decide tomorrow you want to switch from a web app to a mobile app, the only parts that have to change are in those outer two layers. The core business logic, the account and transfer money rules, remains completely untouched. So, first up, testability. Because your business rules, your entities, and use cases have zero dependencies on external systems, you can test them with simple, blazing fast unit tests. No more firing up an entire database or mocking a web server just to check if your core logic works. This is an absolute game changer for your development speed.
Second, maintainability. With this architecture, you can change, update, or even completely replace your database without that cold sweat of dread, that feeling that you're accidentally going to break a critical business calculation. The risk of those unintended side effects is just drastically reduced because the layers are so well isolated. And finally, you get flexibility. Look, technology changes incredibly fast. The hot new framework of today is the legacy system of tomorrow. By treating these frameworks as replaceable plugins, you're essentially future-proofing your application. You gain the freedom to adapt to new technologies without having to rewrite everything from the ground up.
And this brings us to the most important takeaway of all, the central idea that really drives every single decision you make in clean architecture.
It's this: your business logic is the true lasting asset. It's what makes your software unique, what makes it valuable. The entire purpose of this whole architecture is to protect that asset from the constant churn and volatility of technology.
And that's the question I really want to leave you with. Think about the projects you're working on right now. Frameworks, databases, libraries, they will always come and go. But is the core of your application, the actual logic that runs the business, is it truly independent and protected for the long haul?